Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides podcast. My name is Kyle Wilkinson, and I am joined by
Keaton Zakowski. What's going on, folks?
what is going on at this point. We are on episode 3. Yep.
This is you.
What was that?
This one's going to be about you.
This one's about me. So you've heard us introduce the podcast. You've heard us introduce Keaton and learn some background on Mr. Keaton. And in this episode, unfortunately, you have to hear some background on me.
I'm sorry, people. You might want to fast forward to the end.
Yeah. Just skip to the end. Yep. Show Spotify or wherever you're listening to this that you listen to us, so that can come up as a statistic.
This is going to be a good one. You got a lot to share. You got to share. You've gone from state to state, and this is going to be, I think, very interesting for you and for everyone listening. And you it's cool because you got a little more to offer than me. You know, I've only guided in one state. You got where I'm guiding now, and you're guiding in Alaska, which is awesome. So are you ready to just get on into it, Kyle?
Let's do it.
All right. So let me just, same as me, what got you into fishing and hunting?
So, I grew up in Yakima, Washington, or just outside of Yakima, Washington, in a place called Cowiche. I grew up on a little farm, about 10 acres. Mm-hmm. And we had a creek that ran to the backyard, Cowiche Creek. And ever since I can remember, I spent a lot of my time out there in the creek, flipping rocks, catching crawdads, little periwinkles, which I later found out were October caddis nymphs, looking at little insects in the water, catching like little trout, little dace and shiners. We had beaver dams that the beavers built literally on our property every single year. And so you'd have muskrats, you'd have otters, minks. We saw all these things from the house. I shot ducks out of the creek. We've had deer through our property. We've had coyotes and all sorts of critters go through our property. You could literally throw a rock from my front door and hit the creek. So like it was right there. It was perfect. I'd wade downriver, I'd wade upriver. All of our neighbors were cool if I waded through the water and just access. I just had an infinite amount of space to roam as a kid. Besides that, we had like buttes. So it was like a lot of just rocky buttes, just areas where I could run around on the rocks. We had marmots and gray squirrels and all sorts of things out here. I shot starlings and magpies and stuff as a kid with pellet guns. And so I just had an endless amount of things to do. That's what I did all the time. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd see a starling in a tree, and I go grab my pellet gun and I go shoot the starling in the tree or shoot it out of the barn, because it was so much you could do. It was a great place to grow up. And I started fly fishing specifically when I was probably about 3 or 4. I'm 23 now, so that's 20 years of fly fishing, honestly. But there's pictures of me holding a rod and I couldn't even stand up. So a lot of that I can attribute to my dad, who was a teacher. So we had summer breaks, we had weekends and all that, winter breaks. Anytime he had a break, he would take me fishing and hunting. So I grew up in a family that did that. Now, my mom, who is not an outdoors person, doesn't hunt, doesn't fish, she supports me and has supported me my entire life in anything that I've really been interested in. So huge shout out to my mom, because although she is not an outdoorsy person, she supports me 100%, does anything she can to help me fulfill my dreams and do what I want to do. So grew up on the farm, fishing, hunting, running around, learn all things outdoors. Dad would take me fishing. He would take me hunting. I remember go my first year at deer camp and helping people pack out deer and going grouse hunting with my dad and
How
just
old
driving
were
around
you,
the hills. What was that?
how old were you when you were packing out deer? Like what age did you bring you up?
I don't know, like 6 or 7.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I got this picture. I'll have to find it of me. It was the first, I think it was the first deer kill I'd been around. It was one of the other teachers that he works with. They shot a deer, and I remember my dad and I were down the hill from where he was at, and we heard the shot, and so we hiked up the hill, and we had to go help him pack out his buck. I remember that very vividly. I remember at the time my dad isn't much into like buying fancy gear. A lot of the stuff I wore growing up was like Army surplus. We went to Grumpy's Outdoors in or in Union Gap, Yakima, Washington, and a lot of my stuff was like old wool pants and cotton shirts and all this. And I remember growing up thinking like whenever I saw a picture of my dad with a deer, he was always wearing these green wool pants, right? And so I was like, oh, well, these are just his deer gutting pants. I mean, he always comes back with a deer when he wears these pants.
Yeah.
So when his buddy shot that buck, I was like, this is just how it happens. My dad's wearing green pants and deer hitting the ground.
The lucky pants right there. The green lucky pants.
Yeah, he still wears them.
That's awesome.
He literally still wears them.
Did the same pair or did he have to
Yeah,
get?
it's the same pair.
Yeah, that is
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. Been a lot of days growing up as I was growing older. I mean, obviously the reason he bought me like cheap, like armor surplus gear is because I was growing. But I remember like every year I'd be going and getting a new pair of wool pants and a new pair of cotton pants.
Yep.
And I'd have to get them hemmed up from my grandma because they'd always be too big. I was in this stage where I wore clothes that were like 2 sizes too big. And so I looked like a Pillsbury Doughboy in camouflage out there.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of your old photos and your pants are like just super baggy and that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why I was like that, but I was.
They
Yeah,
always back on you. The photos always come creeping up on your timeline. Someone brings them up sometimes. So I'm
yeah.
sure we'll see one of those soon.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna try to find one. My dad has a picture of me fly fishing when I was 4 in this super high alpine creek. By far my favorite fishery in the anywhere I've ever been. Um, he's been taking me up there. I remember the last time I was up there with him, and the the photo I'm wearing like cotton pants, right? Or I'm just wearing like your street clothes, kind of so like generic camel cotton pants. I'm wearing like boots, and I got this camo t-shirt, and I got a camo like fleece vest, and I got a camo hat, and I'm 4, and I'm casting like this 8.5 foot fly rod, and it's just like this thing is like twice as long as I am. It's pretty cool. Um, Catching cutthroat on dry flies, dude. If when I come back to Washington, we got to go there. It's
Oh,
the
absolutely.
place is like nothing you've ever seen. Like it's like there's a little creek that meanders through this alpine meadow, and there's like this big canyon at the end, and you can like wade up this canyon as far as you can go until literally it's like vertical. And it's like, dude, I've had days where it's like 100+ cutthroat all on like dry flies, grasshoppers, dude. They're not huge, but I literally I sat down one time and ate lunch, and while I was eating my sandwich, I caught 5 fish.
You using like a 3 weight up there, or are you sticking to your 4 or 5?
I wouldn't go any. I don't think I've ever gone much bigger than like a 5.
Your 5, yeah. I
I
got
would.
I got my 3 weight primed ready to go. So when you get back, we'll go.
That would be perfect size. Eventually I started packing in my 11-piece 2 weight. That's like 4 feet long.
Holy mackerel!
I don't know where it's at since we moved, but I literally had this rod and it broke into 11 pieces and fit in this little bag, and each piece was like 4 inches long. It was pretty sick.
Yeah, that and it breaks down. It's good to pack in. And is it a pretty far hike? Are you like,
Yes and no. You can drive to it. But I mean, if you want to hike like into the canyon, it's probably like if you were to walk just straight river miles, it's probably like 5 or 6 river miles to the canyon. Otherwise, there's a trail will take you there. But I don't want to give it away. It's a secret.
No, that's fair. It's your little oasis, so you don't want to tell people and have a bunch of people there. Some things you got to keep a secret, even if like even as a guide, like you can't give all the secrets away.
No, this is true. But anyway, so yeah, that's I mean that those are some of my earliest memories. Going grouse hunting with my dad.
So
Um, yeah, got my hunting license when I was like, I think I got it when I was 9 or 10. And I think there's a photo of me. The very first thing I ever killed with my hunting license was a grouse. And I used my 20 gauge Mossberg, and I'm sitting there holding my grouse up with my orange cheesing, and I'm like pulling this thing by its toe. But I remember that. I remember shooting that grouse, and that was the first thing I ever shot. And then shot a couple deer. When I was my first couple years of hunting, really got introduced to it there. And then just grew up doing it. Every weekend was in the fall was like hunting season. All summer we were going on these road trips. My dad would take me to some place in the western United States, and we'd drive and camp and fish. And I'm pretty sure I've been to every national park in the western United States. And what really set me off, so I mean, I've been fly fishing for 20 years. And I started kind of off and on when I was younger. But I did a lot of like bass fishing, and I did a lot of like walleye and trout and steelhead and salmon stuff with my dad and my grandpa. My grandpa was a big influence as well. We were always going out and doing things. And in 2012, I think it was something like that, my dad and I drove to Yellowstone National Park in Grand Tetons. And again, I've been fly fishing for a while. At that point, I was doing it a little more often, but on this trip, I decided to just bring a fly rod, and it was a box of flies that I tied. And the first night that I fished was at the Palisades campground on the Madison River. What was that?
that's a good spot right there. The Madison is one of my favorites.
Yeah. So we pull in a campground, we go out fishing, and my first fish of the night was like a 17-inch. Oh no, my first fish of the night was like a 17, 18-inch rainbow. And then a few minutes later, I caught like a 15, 16-inch brown trout. And then my dad caught like an almost 20-inch brown trout. And I was like, dude, this is sick. Oh, no, wait a minute. This was the second time we fished. The first time we fished was on the Bitterroot, actually, on the way there. And just cutthroat city, man. It was sick because we were hitting it right during the salmon fly hatch or eating salmon fly patterns. It was super cool. Fished all the way there, fished in Yellowstone, caught Yellowstone cutthroat, caught browns, caught brookies, caught rainbows. Went down the Tetons, drove back. It was like from then fly fishing, dude. That's the shit right there. That's what I'm doing. I'm fly fishing.
Yeah.
And pretty much since then, it's just been almost all fly fishing. I have nothing against bait fishing. I have nothing against sitting in a boat trolling for walleye or salmon. I'll do it, but it's not like fly fishing, man. It's not the same. Doesn't do it for me. Yeah.
So let's talk about when me and you met. Like, let's hear your side of the story. So I kind of talked about, I was only fishing for about a month when I met you. Like, what was your first impression when you met me and Keegan and we all went out fishing?
I'm gonna back up just a little bit. Just a little. So when I was in high school, like right after this Yellowstone trip, right? Like I just fly fished all the time, and I was posting on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I was slowly like just kind of like growing an audience. I'm not an influencer by any means, but I was like posting all these photos all the time and just like fly fish. Everybody at school knew me. I was the fish guy, right? And I was fly fishing all the time. And I think that by putting myself out there, I had an opportunity to meet people like you and Keegan, right? Because my friend Jesse, who I taught how to fly fish, I remember the very first, he was probably the first person that I taught how to fly fish successfully. And and I remember him catching his first fish on a fly. I have a photo of it somewhere. But um it was because of that and teaching Jesse is how I met you, because Jesse was like, he joined the fly fishing club and he's like, I got these guys, Keaton and Keegan, you got to meet.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, well, let's go to Montana because that's the place to go fishing on the Yakima.
Yep.
And we pull up, and I think you were already fishing, and I was like getting my waders. And Keegan, I was talking to Keegan. And I'm like, I really like this guy. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember a lot about you.
No, I know. I remember oh man, like before we were going out fishing, Keegan's like, yeah, so Jesse is gonna bring this guy Kyle. Check out his Instagram. And he like gave me his Instagram. I was like, dang, this guy can fish, man. Like he's got pictures. I'm like, oh man, like I said in the last podcast, when I'm like going to meet you, I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be like an embarrassment for me. You and Keegan, you guys been fishing like since you could fly fishing, since you could walk. I was throwing like gear and stuff when I was a kid, but like nothing like you guys. I mean, you like that. So as we're going through this podcast, I'm learning about you. Like I didn't know how young you were when you started fishing right out your front door. And so this is like that's crazy to learn these things as we go. But yeah, as we're like yeah, so as we're back to the story, like I'm going to meet you, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know what you're gonna expect of me. And you guys kicked it off, and it wasn't until later I think that we really started to become friends, and you had respect for my fly fishing.
No, that okay. So everything I've said makes me sound like a pompous asshole, and I don't want to sound that way. But going to meet you guys, I was like, dude, I'm gonna go meet these two guys, and I'm like, this guy Keegan, like, he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, this is like another me. Like going through Keegan's Instagram, like this guy fishes a lot. This guy's a fly fisherman. This is the no. I was like, this is the first ever time I'm meeting somebody my age who's like who has this terrible addiction. So,
It was like a slow boiling bromance about to happen.
oh, dude, and it's blossomed into this thing where now, like, you and I are both in Keegan's wedding. Keegan was in my wedding, and you were left out. So,
Oh, this is awkward now. Okay, I'm not inviting you to mine either.
oh, okay,
I'm just kidding. I'll invite you, Kyle. You're all right.
I'm all right. But anyway, so pulling up, I remember that was just a super awesome night. I was just so freaking stoked that I'd met two more dudes that were my age that were super into fly fishing. I mean, granted, I knew at that time you weren't like, I remember you telling me, I'm sure Keegan was telling me like, you're super new, but I could tell you were passionate. Like,
Yeah.
I could tell like you were in it to learn it, right?
Yeah.
You were like, I don't know shit about fly fishing, but I'm gonna learn it. I'm here.
Hey, yeah.
Being friends with Keegan, like that's the best dude to learn it from. Honestly.
Oh, 100%.
So,
He's row, fish, all that. He's a great guy.
dude, yeah, he's done the same thing for me. I would not be where I'm at my knowledge and what I know about fly fishing if it hadn't been for Keegan.
Yeah. And like my knowledge going, just want to add on, is like me going into this, I always thought, it was great to meet younger people because you see a couple years ago, the cover photos were like old guys fishing in a creek with their canes or something, right? They're like wading stick, throwing a dry fly back and forth. And I was like, I thought you had to like move the fly back and forth a lot. So coming out and meeting you guys and Keegan and Jesse, like we're starting a foundation there. And I mean, younger people on the river, you don't see that every day.
Yeah. I mean, and then just going back to the whole thing behind this podcast. That's why we started this podcast, because we are we are the young guys. We're the next generation, and we're you got to have this voice in the industry,
Yep,
in the
absolutely.
community. But yeah, you can tell you're super passionate. I was super stoked to meet you guys, and ever since then, I haven't stopped talking to you and Keegan. And look where we are. This is 5 years later.
Isn't that crazy?
Almost like
Yeah.
to the month. This is 5 years later.
That's like I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, how long have I been friends with you guys? And I was like, holy crap! Like 2016, the time's flown like gone by really quick.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm glad we're all still friends. I mean, you've moved to another state. Keegan's busy. I mean, we're all still chatting. We're trying to get on Zoom, and I mean, this is kind of why we got on here, because we, like you said, we have some interesting stuff to talk about, and we're, you know, chatting about it. So I, you're talking about fishing. You talked about, us. What really got you into guiding? Like, where was the turning point? You're a recreational fisherman, and you're teaching me. You're teaching Jesse, and then you and Keegan are learning from each other. But like, what point were you like, you know what? I really want to go guide. I want to, I want to make this into a career.
So about that time, I was like, I don't want this to sound like I'm full of myself, which I might be, but no, I don't want this to come across as wrong. But I was at a point where I was like, I think I know what I'm doing fly fishing wise. And I think I'm at the point where I have enough knowledge and skill to teach somebody else how to do it.
Mhm.
But I didn't know how to go about it. So I was sending out like emails and messages on Instagram to different guides that are still actually around on the Yakima. And I was like, hey, can I shadow you? Or hey, can I learn more about guiding? Or I was like, I almost applied to guide schools, and I was like, can I work for you? Can I learn more from you? Blah blah blah. And they're like, yeah. I had a lot of support.
Mhm.
And there might even be some of those guys that listen to this podcast that are now friends, colleagues, fellow guides. And yeah, I was like trying to figure it out. And then I was like, you know what? What if I just did this on my own? And I looked up all these things that we talked about on your episode: business license,
Yeah.
guide license. I was like, oh, this is a lot. I think I put it on the back burner. I remember I was at I think this was the time when I was at the Yakima Valley College, like a year or two out of high school. I'm sitting in the common area. I'm just like going through my computer all the time, like how to become a guide schools, this and that, like researching fishing all the time. On weekends between classes, I would go down and fish at the local ponds for like sunfish and bass and stuff. Like I was just trying to fish as much as possible. And in the winter of 2017, this guy named Stefan messaged me on Instagram. And at this point, Keegan had been guiding for Ellensburg Angler, and Stefan is the head guide for Ellensburg Angler. And Stefan messages me, and I remember this vividly. I was sitting in my living room at my dad's, and my dad was in the room. And Stefan messages me and asks me, like, hey, are you interested in guiding? I was like, yeah, I've been interested in guiding. I kind of put it on the back burner. And he's like, well, Keegan said that you might be a good guy to reach out to. And I just wanted to pick your brain and see if you wanted to go and try it next year. And I'm like, try it. Let's do it. And he's like, awesome. And so we started talking. And I remember looking at my dad, and I'm sure my dad didn't think I'd follow through. And I was like, I had this like this smirk on my face, like, dude, I'm gonna go fly fishing guy. I want to do this. And I was super stoked. And yeah, Keegan must have lied to Stefan or something, because they offered to train me. And I remember my first trip. I pulled up to the Ringer boat launch, and I hop out of the truck, and there, I'm pretty sure it was Todd and Stefan and Dewey and Rich when he guided for Ellensburg Angler, and then me and Keegan. And I'm like, wow. Because I follow these guys. I was like, I listened to Stefan on like the Orvis podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's like celebrities. I'm fishing with celebrities. It's so cool, man. Fishing with guides. This is awesome. And we were fishing, and it was cool. I got to get on the sticks a little bit because I was trying to teach myself how to row. And I was sucking, and I remember fishing with them and like taking photos and just hanging out was super chill. And I remember we just passed Bighorn. I think we were taken out at either 20 or up. I can't remember. But and I remember like Keegan and Stefan are fishing, I'm rowing, and they're getting to all these fish on streamers. I'm like, man, this sucks. Why can't I catching fish? And I almost said something that day too. This is something I've never told anybody. Is that I was sitting in the boat, like I almost asked, like, hey, can I do some fishing? Like this sucks. And then I was thinking, like, you know what? That's guiding. Like,
Yeah. You're like, man, I just want to fish.
yeah, and it's like I was like, oh, I should probably hold my tongue because this was technically a job interview, right? So I get to the end of the float, and Seven's like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I like this. He's like, all right, let's do it. Let's get you trained up. And at that point, I fished with Keegan or Rich or Stefan or Todd or everybody at the same time as much as I could every weekend, every time I had a day off. Trying to learn the Yakima, trying to learn how to guide, trying to learn how to row. I remember this was in like the fly fishing club was in full swing. So Keegan was not only guiding, but he was also taking out people like Cole and people like you. Like we were all going out learning. I caught probably my biggest fish on the Yakima one day. I finished a geology final or an astronomy final at YVC, and I was driving up afterwards because I was going to meet Cole and Keegan for a float so we could learn how we run trips, how we teach other people. And I remember driving up, stopped halfway at boom, a 23-inch rainbow. And then I drove up and I met those guys, and I was just like cloud nine. I was like learning. Remember that was the first day Keegan showed me how we like do stakes on the side of the river. We had lunch just below Trestle on that inside right bend where the teepee is. And I remember him teaching me there and hanging out with Cole. And I caught a few fish that day, but I remember him teaching me like all these different holes and these lines to take and all this stuff. I'm like, I was like, how am I going to memorize all these holes? Like this river's so long. How am I going to know exactly where to take my boat and where to take my clients? Like, how do I know that bucket? Like, how am I going to remember to hit that every time? And obviously you remember like it doesn't take super long and you got to get a few reps in. But then I was like, oh yeah, that's that bucket. Oh yeah, let's go to this bucket over here. Oh yeah, I should probably not hit that rock right there. So yeah, I trained with those guys, fished them all I could. And I started in like December is when Stefan first reached out to me. And I didn't run my first guide trip until like June, like the middle of June. So I trained with these guys. I wanted to make sure I was proficient rowing, guiding, fishing. I remember the last time I went out with Stefan, and he's like, dude, I think you're good, dude. Like you don't like, I think you're ready to roll. And obviously I was rough as hell because I had never guided before, but having that confidence from Stefan showed me like, all right, I guess I'm ready to do this.
Yeah.
And I started guiding from there. And I remember my first trip, I had a guy and his brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. And dude, rough start right off the bat. I pull out of the ringer launch, and as you come around the corner, you have that island, right? Mm-hmm. And at the bottom end of the island, it splits, and you can either go right on that little shallow spot and hit that hole below the island, right? Or you can go left and take the main channel. And I was so nervous. I was like, do I hit the hole or do I take the main channel? That I took too long. I ran into the middle of that island. I don't know if I ever told you that. I pinned my boat in there and I hop out. And the guy's like, oh, is everything good? I'm like, yeah. This is normal. This is okay.
Dude. So the first time I came up on that, I was like, first solo trip. Keegan's like, yeah, you got this. Go do it. It's like fall. I'm rolling up and it splits. And I'm like, where do I go? And almost the same thing happens to me. I was like, I think I'm gonna go right, and my boat just teeters, and I'm like, so it happens to all of us. Never
Oh,
right after that. But
yeah.
what happened? Like when you're like, okay, everything's good.
I just jumped out and I pushed the boat off. Oh, it's totally normal. This happens every time.
It's a good test run for our boat. We like to make sure it's good before we really like hit the river, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And no, it was a rough,
I never knew
rough
that.
trip. And it was like uh the first fish we caught. I can't remember. I remember I have a picture of this guy holding up a fish like an 8-inch squawfish. Like he's super proud of it. And then I think he caught another bigger trout because then his brother-in-law, like we only landed like 3 trout. But what really helped me out was you can still go back the day. They left me a 5-star review and this giant like 200 word essay review on Yelp, like Orvis, Google, and reading that, even though it was a terrible fishing trip, having that positive reinforcement, I think, really told me, you know what? I think I can do this. Like if I'd had a 1-star review, I'd probably been like, yeah, this is kind of shitty. This sucked. I'm not gonna ever do this again. But
Yeah.
because I had 2 dudes that were super cool, I never told them it was my first guide trip either. But having that positive reinforcement was like, all right, let's do this. I feel like I can do this. And that's what really helped me out, I think. Um, from then on, it was just I was pretty low at that point on the guide pull. I can't remember, Steph. Well, Mike didn't guide much because he was owner then. He guided a little bit. Stefan, Todd, Keegan, I think Rich was still there a little bit at that time. They were all above me, right? So I was like 5 or 6 in the guide staff. And I was like, I wasn't guiding a lot.
Yeah.
I was living in Ellensburg at that time, but I think I ran 50 trips my first year, and that was a rough 50 trips. And um, it was similar to what I ran into up here in Alaska, is that your first year, you don't know what you're doing day to day. Like the river changes every day to day, season to season, like hour to hour, right? And so I started out in June, and it's like we're fishing the Miracle Mile caddis, right? We're nymphing certain bugs. And my first year, like this is all so new that I would be stuck in this rut a lot of times, like, oh, well, yesterday I was fishing an indicator to a Pat's, and I'm using my swivel with a tungsten weight above it to hold my stuff down, and I was trailing, I don't know, like some kind of caddis nymph behind it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna work every day. And then I'm not adjusting depth, I'm not changing flies, sizes, colors. And then I'm getting to the point like, why am I not catching fish? And it's because I wasn't changing, because I didn't know, right? I didn't know how to change. I didn't know what to do differently because I hadn't had that experience yet. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I think that swivel's scaring the fish. Take the swivel off, figuring things out. Oh, you know what? That fly's not working. I should probably change the fly. Or like, you know what? I'm not tapping bottom. I'm going to deepen it up. Or you know what? I lost 10 bugs. I'm going to shorten it up, right? So, and then the same thing with patterns. It's like, all right, so we're fishing caddis, and then we're fishing summer stones, and then we're fishing grasshoppers, and then now you're getting into the hottest parts of the day, and you're nymphing. I'm like, okay, I'm fishing a coffee pat stone in a size 8. And then I would like, some days it would be good, some days it wasn't. And I was like, why isn't it working? And then the more you go, you're learning, oh, well, maybe they're eating a size 6 or a size 10. You're just learning to try different things, trying to imitate different types of insects. Some days it's like some things would set like the salmon fly nymphs off. Like you'd have to pay attention and learn the different types of weather. And maybe you'd have to bump up your size or go to a darker color. And I just didn't know that, especially in the fall. River, I was used to float in the river at like 4,000 CFS, and then boom, river drops. I think that year it went down to like under 900, I think. Yeah. So it was super low. I'm like, dude, I don't know where to fish. Everywhere I was catching fish with the clients this summer is dry. And so it was, again, learning different lines. It was learning what different bugs to fish. And at this point, I was tying a lot of my flies, which I still do. But a lot of the flies I was tying and the way that I was fishing them wasn't working for guiding. And I was having to adapt not only with the changing seasons, I was having to adapt to myself and my old habits, my old tendencies. And if it worked for me, or on other places I fish, it might not work for other people where we were fishing at the time we were fishing. So I was learning how to have to adapt. And that whole first season was super rough. I learned a lot. I had a lot of great clients. We caught fish. We had a great time, a lot of good memories, but it was rough. Coming in the second year, things were a little different. I knew what to expect. Maybe not day to day, hour to hour, and I still don't. But I had a better idea. I knew, like, all right, so I'm going to start out my first trips of the year. I'm going to be running like a pat stone under a weight, super deep with a sandworm or a squirmy worm, right? And then I'm gonna like, all right, I'm gonna start getting ready. This is what I should look for when the squalls start popping. This is the water they're gonna be in. I can think ahead. I'm like, all right, so I know that as I'm coming around the corner, coming around Bighorn Bank, I know if I want to hit that, I want to hit that left side on Bighorn Bank against the road because that's where the deeper water is. And then there would be and then at this point, I was taking the same spots every time. And when I was taking the same lines every time, I was starting to notice things. I'm like, why am I fishing? Why aren't I fishing river right? Or why am I not fishing 20 feet off the bank instead of the 10 feet off the bank that I'm at? And that's just learning all these different things, trial and error. One thing you do one day, if it doesn't work out, try it the next day. Maybe it works out a little better. Um, I don't know. It just took a lot of trial and error, a lot of time on the sticks, on the water, to really get going and learn and get into guiding. And I remember when I was living in Ellensburg, my first year, when I first started guiding, I was living at this guy's apartment above his shop. It was like 2 flights of stairs, right? And I was young. Um, I was in decent shape, but I definitely wasn't in rowing shape. And I get back, dude, and my hands would be tired. I'll be so tired being in the sun all day. And
Yeah.
I'd freaking pull out my cooler from my boat and I'd lay it down on the ground by the base of the stairs. And I would sit on the ground and play with this guy's cat in the dark because I was so tired. I didn't have the energy to go up the freaking stairs. And I just remember that. And I look back on that and I'm like, it just took a while. Actually, I have a note. I don't know where it went, but when I first started guiding, um, I would always take notes like, all right, I need to make sure I have my lunch stuff. I need to make sure I have my fly cups. I need to make sure my freaking shuttle key is in the right spot. I make sure I need to pay Mark, I still have that. And I got to the point, like texting Mark, like where to go. I didn't have to tell him who I was or where my key was or whatever. He just knew, right? And I knew to expect where my truck was going to be. But back then I was like, who the hell is this Mark guy? Like, I don't even know if I met this guy, and he was shuttling my truck for me,
A little
And
nerve wracking.
yeah, and it's like I have this whole list, and it's so cool to look back at that list and be like, wow, that's where I started, and then here's where I am now. Like it's cool.
Yeah.
It's been a super cool learning process. I know that I took that way off track. I probably jumped
No,
ahead of it,
no,
but
you're good.
these are things that hop into my mind. And I know these are things I've never told some people, and I've told you. But I also think a lot of the stuff that I've gone through, will help you, Keaton, or help other young guides. Like I saw you. I don't know if you were taking notes, or I saw you writing something down. I don't know if you were taking notes or not, but like these are things that I wish I had known. And it's not that those guys didn't teach me. It's just stuff that um, you can't teach. You have to learn it. But I wish I had been more aware or been told to be more aware. And so that's why I feel like I need to share that because to new guys, I think they need to be more open to those type of things. And the biggest thing was, like I was saying, I fished all the time. And I always wanted to get these fish pictures to post online and stuff, right? And I was all about that. Like I was all about getting one for the gram and catching all these fish. But I learned that this isn't about me anymore. This isn't about me catching these fish. This is about my clients catching fish. And it took me a little while to kind of lose that me focus and gain that focus on clients and putting them on the fish to the point now where honestly, like, I don't like on my days off, I don't really go fishing anymore. Obviously I do, but it's not like my super draw because I'm so focused on getting my clients on the fish and having less focus on me and more focus on the people that want me to teach them. And all my attention goes to that now instead of me going out and doing it for myself. Now it's different when there are silvers in the river because I love to fill my freezer with silvers and I will bonk every legal silver that I can. I was at a point this year where I was bonking silvers. I only started keeping bucks because I didn't want to destroy the population.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it was just a huge transition from a me focus. I want to catch lots of fish because fly fishing is cool to being no. I'm focusing on clients, putting them on to fish, teaching, and not just teaching about fly fishing. I want to teach them about the geology of the Yakima River, the white band that's across from Luma.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like what that is, or talking to them about the basalt columns, as you're driving through the canyon, or oh, look at those are bighorn sheep. This is one of the few birds in Washington State, or look, those are some turkeys. And there were so many times that I would call the turkeys and they'd like talk back and they'd call, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, hell yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Or I told you about the cougar I saw this spring, right?
Yeah, you did. It jumped in.
Yeah, I was with one of my good clients and we're in the farmlands and this cougar jumps in the river and then runs out right in front of us. Like, there's so many cool things that happen, not just in fly fishing. It happens when you're taking clients out, and it helps to be open-minded and to be able to teach these people new things. So,
Well, one thing I kind of learned too is you mentioned, we're going back a little bit, is you mentioned the gram pictures, right? I was kind of with you, like when you start fly fishing, you're like, oh, I got to get a big old nasty trout for the gram. But as I started guiding this year, I realized how much appreciation these people that have never fly fished, they come out and they catch 6, 7, 8-inch fish and they're ecstatic. They're like, I did this, I got this in the net, this is awesome. And as I started to watch that, I was like, maybe I'm not taking the time to appreciate even the small fish. And I think I can't speak for you, Kyle, but now, even when I'm out fun fishing or fishing with them and I catch just a little guy, I just kind of hold it for a second just to be like, wow, this is like, I got this fish to eat. I'm here. I collided, our worlds collided. I get to experience this, and there's like just nothing better than that. So
100%, dude. 100%. It's the evolution. You go from learning to wanting to catch a bunch of fish to catch the biggest fish for the gram.
Yeah.
Where you don't care if you catch a fish or you want to catch it your way, or if you're a guide, you want your clients to catch fish. And then once you can get your clients on fish, you want to get your clients on big fish. Yep. Then once you get your clients on big fish, you want to there are times where I know something will work with clients, but I will purposely do something different because I want them to catch the fish a different way.
Yeah.
And having the confidence and the knowledge to know how to do that, that's just part of your evolution as an angler and as a guide.
So I got a question. We're talking about your guiding. If like when you look back on this, and someone like say like me's coming into the game, what's one thing that you wish you took from your several years of guiding and like you wish you like really like what's the best advice that you could give a new guide? Like what's one thing that really just stands out?
That's a tough one. I saw there's two things. This makes me think of one other thing. But to answer your question, something I wish I'd known. I wish I had planned ahead a little bit more, I think. Going back and talking about like when I was like, I don't know what's coming next. Like I wish I had done more research. I wish I had asked for more help from my other guides. Like, hey, what can I expect? This, and this, and kind of planning ahead, and not because I felt like my first couple of years I was always one step behind. And so looking back, I wish I had planned out more. Like, okay, so I should be planning for this to happen around this time, this to this time. The river's going to change. I'm going to be looking ahead, like, oh, maybe I should be looking at river forecasts and weather forecasts and all these things. I wish I had just been. I always felt two steps behind when I wish I had felt at least one step ahead my first couple of years. So just planning and knowing where you're going, what's going on. I wish I had known that. Now, another thing that made me think of something that I was thankful for was my support team. I had my family. I had Emily, who was then girlfriend and then fiance at that time, and then now my wife. Huge support. She's always supported me in doing things and going for it, and always never unwavering in her support for me and my dreams, and ultimately a job that has now helped support our family, help to pay for our move to Alaska, and then it's just the people that I've surrounded myself with, you and Keegan and all my friends and the other guides, like having a good team around you, a good community, is a good way to start. And I've seen now, guiding in different places, how if I had started with a different group of people, I might have a different outlook on the industry that could be kind of negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that I had the people around me at the time that I did when I was young, and was more open, and these people had more influence on me. I'm glad that I had the people around me that I did.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. I think that if I had a different group, it could have been a lot different. I might not be guiding now, or I just got to have a whole different mindset on fly fishing and on guiding as a whole. So I guess talking about that now, my advice to a young guide would be to have a better surround yourself with a good community.
Yeah. So we were talking about, you're talking about your challenges. You gave some advice to new guides. You went from Washington State to Alaska. So what was like the biggest adjustment in fishing for you when you went from Washington State to Alaska?
The Yakima River is a fickle bitch, and I'm glad I'm away from it. I'm leaving this in. All right. The Yakima River is one of the hardest rivers, I feel like. All right. Would you agree, Keaton?
I would agree. It's pretty tough. I have fished a few other like little rivers and stuff in Washington, and I think Washington fisheries are pretty hard as they are, but there's just something about the Yakima. She's emotional, and it changes a lot.
Yeah, the fishing changes. You got like 4 different types of river. It's both a freestone and a tailwater at the same time, right? It's a hard one, dude. Like if the Teanaway blows out, anything below Cle Elum is chocolate milk, right?
Yep.
But if they're releasing water from the dam, the whole river is high. And then if they release a lot of water from the dam, the whole river is high, right? So it's like the river is influenced so much.
Wilson,
What?
Wilson Creek.
Yeah, Wilson Creek. If that thing's chocolate milk, like if it rains on the north side of the Kittitas Valley, you're kind of effed. Like
80% of the time, like Wilson Creek, like any time of the year I go by it is chocolate, and I don't know why. It just adds chocolate to the river.
well, it's because it goes through all those farms, and we got
Yeah.
that dairy out there. It goes through Wilson Creek goes like part of that goes through campus, like part of that goes through Central's campus. So the Yakima River, changing from that system to a entirely different type of fishing. In the Yakima, like I was saying, summertime you're flowing like 35 to 100 to 4,000 cubic feet per second. And then in the wintertime, you're like 1,000 or less cubic feet per second. And it's a big river with like, oh yeah, there's a rock on the other side of the river. I don't want to hit that rock.
Mhm.
Right. And then we're rowing fiberglass drift boats.
Mhm.
Up here in Alaska, where I'm guiding, the river this summer was flowing at like barely over 200 cubic feet per second. It's this like if you were to go in a straight line from where we put in the boat to where we take out, is probably less than like 4 or 5 miles in a straight line, right?
Mhm.
And when we float it, it's like 7 or 8 because it's just super windy and it's wooded. Like I've never lost so many flies in my life because it's so wooded. It's so small. We're in rafts. There's log jams. You can't not have experience rowing this creek. Like the boat launch where I put in at, the person who owns that property does not let canoers or kayakers put in there because it's that tough of a creek. Not, I mean, not tough, but just because the water, you can't, and some of those spots are so tight, you can't. And there's times this summer I was dragging rafts over over rocks because it was so shallow. It's so tight in there. You can't, like, I've seen drift boats go in there, but it's tough, dude. It's super tough. Um, and it's Alaska. Like the fishing is totally different. There's the aggressiveness, the pressure, the size, what the fish are eating, is everything was so totally different. Um, not only was that different, again, what they were eating, like on the Yakima, it whatever you're fishing with flies, imitating whatever insects or food sources are in the river at any given time. Back home, that was like 90%, 95% insects, right? Well, we had stone flies, caddis flies, salmon flies, crane flies. We had mayflies. We had all the green drakes. We had all these insects, and that's what 99% of what the fish ate. Yeah, sometimes you catch them on like worm patterns, or very rarely would I ever throw a streamer. Just, who would ever guide with a streamer? That sounds really hard. And then I come up here in Alaska, and these fish only eat a couple things. They eat lamprey, they eat other fish, they eat mice,
Mhm.
and they eat a couple bugs and eggs. That's it. I was telling my boss where I work right now at Heather's Choice, I was telling him that honestly, you could only buy one fly pattern in Alaska and be just fine. If you bought a Dalai Lama or tied a Dalai Lama in different sizes and colors, you could catch fish year round. Well, I should say you should catch fish, all the different species of fish during the season, because you can't fish year round up in Alaska. That's another thing, is I'm not guiding right now. Or if I'm on the Yak, I'd be guiding almost every day. Right now, well, one, nobody's up here to fish, and there's ice on a lot of the places, right? And that's another thing that leads me to another thing, that I will get back to. But learning that 90% of my guiding up here is on streamers and how to fish streamers and what I'm imitating, and why I'm imitating those things. And then that gets to the point of, all right, when I'm starting the season, I need to be fishing like fry patterns or smolt patterns, because all the baby salmon that hatched in the river are headed downriver, and those freaking giant predatory trout are just smashing these smolts and these fries against the log jams.
Yeah.
And so I need to know let me I know you guys on the podcast can't see this, but where is my fly box? Look at my fly box, Keaton. These are all white woolly buggers.
That's insane.
That's a whole side of my fly box. I'm working on my black side of the woolly bugger box right now. Like,
Hey,
that's literally all I would fish when they're freaking going down river.
for people that can't see this, it's like a mid-range fly box, couple probably like what 7-8 inches long and 4 or 5 inches wide. It's a good sized fly box, and it is full of buggers.
Yeah, just buggers.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then it's learning that like when to fish what throughout the year.
Yeah.
Or like in the beginning of the season, we were fishing like eggs and flesh from this past fall, things that were frozen. That when it thaws, it gets flushed downriver, and those trout, as they work their way upriver, which is another thing, these trout migrate here, right? They're like mini steelhead. They go from these little creeks and stuff where I'm guiding into these bigger systems, and they sit in these big deep holes in the river when everything is iced up, and then as things break up and warm, they slowly start working their way back upriver.
Crazy.
Dude, it's totally different type of
Yeah.
fishing, right? And then you have this the kings that start coming in like June, early July, right? And then they push the trout around, and then they start laying eggs. Trout start eating king eggs, and then you have these things called pink salmon that come in the river. And there was for like 3 weeks, right? When I'm up here in Alaska, I guided almost every single day from the middle of May until September, the middle of September, right? When the pinks first got here, I had no idea how to fish for salmon on a fly rod. And so I was like, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing. And there was a couple times where we weren't catching any pinks with clients because I didn't know how to fish for them. But I slowly learned how to fish. And then I got to the point where we were having good days of pink fishing. And I'd be like, yeah, I've never actually caught a pink salmon. Be totally honest with you guys. I've never, like, once we caught one pink, I'd be like, guys, I've never caught a pink salmon in my life. You've caught more pink salmon than I've ever have.
Oh man.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I
You're
never caught one. It was
like your clients just like give you crazy eyes, like, is this guy serious right now or what?
Yeah, they would give me weird looks because I'd be like, yeah, I've never caught a pink, and we're like 50 pinks deep at this point in the day, you know?
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, but totally different world because you're fishing trout, they're eating different things. The trout are bigger,
Yeah.
they're more aggressive. There's fewer trout, and then you got all the different salmon species, and you're learning how to fish all these different things, and you're fishing, like I said, smaller waters. You're fishing out of a raft. You're fishing mice patterns. Oh, sickest mouse I ever saw. I was out with one of the other guides. We were out after he was done guiding. I think my trip had got canceled that day, so he guided. Once he was done, we went and floated again. We come across this little hole. There's this little recirculating eddy. The water like hits this log, and it shoots out, right? And then as it shoots out, it creates this little eddy. And I'm rowing, and I'm watching ahead, and I watch him throw this mouse pattern right into the this eddy, and he doesn't move the mouse, like it's stationary, like it plops on the water, and it just slowly recirculates in this eddy in slow motion. This 24-inch rainbow, I just watched this thing like come up, just like
Yeah.
ascend. It didn't blow up on it. He sipped it like it would a blueing olive on the Yakima, like real slow. Oh, dude. Oh,
Just a subtle eat.
dude. Yeah, it was crazy. Here,
It's like
yeah.
he saw like a spaghetti noodle with that tail hanging in the water and just was like couldn't pass it up.
Dude, it was freaking incredible. I'm gonna show Keaton the photo. I know you guys can't see it, but I
We'll
got
post
it
it. Can post it on the we'll post it on our Instagram.
for sure. I gotta get. I'm sure Willie doesn't care, but I'll ask. Oh, where is this photo? This thing was freaking incredible. Where did it go? Sorry, Keaton. I gotta take a pause here. I gotta show you this fish. Have I showed it to you?
I don't know. I just all I get from so just so you know, all I get from Kyle is pictures of giant rainbows with his client. It's either his client, it's either him or another guide that is just holding these giant bows. Oh yeah, I did see that one. That one was insane, and the colors on it is freaking awesome. I remember seeing that. You posted that a while back. That is crazy. Yeah, and so like we catch on the yak like 6, 8, 10 inches. I mean, what's the minimum size there, Kyle?
I mean, we have small fish
Yeah,
in Alaska.
yeah. It doesn't seem like that. I just want to put that out there. I swear I've never seen like even the small fish look big.
Um, Honestly, I'd say our average size where I guide is like 15 inches,
Yeah.
14 inches. like this makes me sound really cocky, but at the beginning of the day, I will now tell clients that we will touch fish over 20 inches every day. At least two or three. We'll touch 2 or 3 trout over 20 inches that day.
What's the biggest fish you've seen netted out there? You seen anything at like 24?
I had a gal this year on one of our helicopter trips, where we flew in on a helicopter with clients, like rafts rolled up into the helicopter, frames broken down on a cage on the side of the helicopter. We land on a gravel bar in the middle of nowhere. They take off, and it's you and your clients, and you got to float your way out. And first fish of the day, this lady from like Texas or something, Tennessee, somewhere down there, is with her family. Not a lot of fly fishing knowledge. Her first fish of the day is a 24-inch rainbow, and we get it in the net.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I would have to say probably my biggest on Willow is the one I just showed you. Or I had this one gal, her first, it was her and her friend were up here, and her very first ever fish on a fly rod was a 25-inch rainbow. Totally screwed her for the rest of her life. Here you go.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That one's sick. That's crazy.
There is big fish in there. There are very big fish in this river.
So we're kind of at the portion we're gonna be winding down here pretty soon. We posted earlier on our Instagram asking people to ask questions for Kyle. We'll be doing this for a lot of our podcasts. You can find us, go on our story. We'll ask about that podcast, about a topic. You can ask us questions. We'll do some Q&A at the end of podcasts. But we got a few today, and I'm going to ask Kyle a couple of them. We're going to just go down the list, and then we'll end it. So, so we had someone, Eric Machowek, reached out to us, and he wanted to know, how is Alaska so far, like generally, or yeah.
Alaska so far, digging it. It's been a huge adjustment for Emily and I. We're both working. She's going to be starting nursing school. That's really the reason we came up here, is for her pursuing nursing school, but also so I'd have an opportunity to do some new outdoor things, guide new places. But it's just, I've never been this far away from family. I've never been in a town this big, but also this small. I'm in Anchorage. Anchorage has like somewhere around between 350 and 400,000 people in Anchorage, and that sounds like a lot. But there are 700,000 people in the whole state. So over half of the state's population lives in Anchorage, between Anchorage and the Mat-Su Valley. Like that's like your biggest population in the entire state. And even though like it's a big city, quote, big city, driving downtown is nothing like driving in downtown Seattle or something, right? And I see the same cars every day. Like when I was driving from here to where I guide every day, I would see the same cars on the freeway every day.
That's crazy.
So I've never had been in such a big town with a small town feel. It was a culture shock moving up here. Laws and rules are different, and just the way people are is different. Fishing was different. I have to be careful when I walk in my backyard, because I've literally had cow and calf moose walk in my yard. I've had to climb a tree once this year because I got chased by a moose. So
I didn't know about that.
yeah, I showed you. Didn't I send you the video? I have a video of me sitting in a tree because a moose ran me up a tree.
Holy crap! Was she snarling and stomping at you, or?
She barked at me, and then she was like walking at me with her ears back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's like, it's totally different world up here. And it's like when Emily goes for a run, we bought her a backpack that has a spot where she can put her bear spray. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, gnarly. And right now it's November 4th, and it's snowing right now. and it's supposed to be like in the teens at night for the next week.
Yeah, no
It doesn't
fishing.
get, it doesn't get sunrise right now in Anchorage is like super late. It is at sunrise in Anchorage tomorrow morning will be 9:40 a.m. and then it gets dark at like 5:30.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's just been a whole culture shock moving up here.
Let's step away from fishing. What's like one of the biggest things that you miss from Washington? Like food? Is there like a food you wish you could eat? Is there like a place you wish you could see? Like, what's something you miss?
I miss my mom's cooking when it comes to food. I also miss good Mexican food. There's not very much good Mexican food up here in Alaska, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I
What's like
miss,
a good food up in Alaska?
ooh, surprisingly, my mom is Asian and she cooks good Asian food, but there's surprisingly a lot of good Asian restaurants up here. Um, Besides that, honestly, um, the big thing up here is being self-sustainable, right? And so a lot
Yeah.
of people are harvesting their own meat and their own food and growing their own veggies. So that's one thing that I've come to learn up here that we do more often. We grew a garden. We start eating organic. We don't eat red meat except for like if it's wild game. So just having changing our lifestyle to kind of fit in up here a little bit, be more sustainable, self-reliant. That's actually kind of the good food to eat up here. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's crazy. Uh,
Yeah,
different, definitely like a little culture shock to you.
yeah,
That's
for
kind of that's what I was thinking too, because like you know how Vancouver is like really known for its like cuisines like of Asian descent, and Seattle's really known for like teriyaki and stuff. So I was like, you know, it's like West Coast. I mean, still's got to be some really good
Oh
food.
yeah. I
So
mean, and then there's good seafood and there's pretty much anything you want in Anchorage. But
awesome.
I also miss being close to my family, people that I really respect in the guide industry, and then there's a lot of things I miss. I miss hunting. I didn't hunt much this year, even though I'm in Alaska, right?
Yeah.
I didn't hunt because one, I was guiding, and two, it's expensive. I'm not considered a resident up here for 12 months, and as a non-resident, to buy a big game hunting license and tags is super expensive. Whereas next year it's dirt cheap to shoot a moose. So it's like I'm gonna sacrifice a year of hunting,
Yeah.
uh, so that next year I can have a hell of a time.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, you know, this last question's from Austin Chu, and then we kind of also like you asked me on the end of mine, so I wanted to ask you. His question was, "What was your most epic trip so far?" And the last one, you're like, "Let's end with an epic guide story." So let's hear like, what was the epic guide story for you?
Uh, Probably doing a 8-day expedition trip in Western Alaska. Um, I don't know if I've told you all these stories yet. Um, so trip started out in Anchorage, flying commercial like a regular commercial plane from Anchorage to Bethel, which is a village, right? The only way to get there is by airplane.
Mhm.
And fly into the commercial airport in Bethel. A van takes us to a hangar where we load and unload and then repack gear, which takes us on a plane, a small plane like a Cessna, with me and like two other guys, and then from there. So go back. There's 9 of us. There's 4 guides, 5 clients. So we go from Anchorage to Bethel. In Bethel, we go to a small hangar with a small plane that shuttles us from Bethel to the village. And then from the village, we take another plane with Tundra tires that takes us from the village to the LZ. And this whole thing took several trips because you've got to do 6 people or 9 people and then all their gear for 8 days flying to all these different places. So I mean, it takes a day to get to the landing zone. And by the time everybody was at the landing zone, everything was off the planes. This is like probably like 8 o'clock at night, right? Like it takes all day to get everybody there. Um, on the last flight, it's like you, gear, and the pilot, and you're flying in this thing, and it's called the mall, and you're in this like super loud plane. Like you have to wear earplugs in these ones, super loud. You're like right next to the pilot, you're cramped in, and it's like a metal frame, and then it's like this canvas material. Like it's not solid. Like if I would take a knife, I could stab a hole in the side of this plane. Like it's like this thick kind of canvas material wrapping the plane, and
Yeah.
you're flying, and we start in the ocean, right? Like there's the Bering Sea, like right out to my right, and then you're flying into the mountains. So you're flying over like this lowland, and it slowly gets steeper and steeper and steeper, and then you fly through this gap, and you're like looking up on the hillsides, and it's like I'm flying into the hunting show on the Outdoor Channel. Like it's just tundra, dude. Like you're flying into the mountains, and it gets as you're going through the mountains, the landscape changes. And on the flight in, I saw a brown bear like out the window on this hillside. Like it was so cool. I'm like, dude, this is legit. Like I'm not seeing anybody out here.
Yeah.
You're flying through this gap, and then it gets more mountainous and mountainous and mountainous. I'm looking down, and we're following the river. And from the airplane, I can see salmon in the river. Like, oh, I'm gonna be floating down that for the next week, you know? We're flying. I'm like, dude, this is like picturesque mountains and tundra all around us. I'm like, where the hell are we gonna land out here? And my pilot like does this big loop, and he kind of comes down at the river. I'm like, where are we landing? I don't see a place to land. And I can see our head guide and a load of gear that was already flown out ahead of me sitting on the bank. How are we going to land there? And he like drops, right? And as we're coming up to where we're going to land, we're landing at the top of a cliff. And we're flying right at this cliff. I'm like, dude, are we even going to freaking like he touches his tires like 10 feet from the edge of this like he goes over the cliff, and he touches his feet like 10 feet from the edge. He touches his tires 10 feet from the edge, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna crash into the side of this cliff. Smoothest landing of the whole trip. Oh, just glides right across the tundra on those tires. And he goes to the end, and he slams on his brakes or whatever, stops us, turns us on the tundra, and then drives us over to the other gear. I hop out, unload, and then we do that for several more times. So he lands us at the top of the cliff in the tundra, overlooking the river that I'm going to be on for the next 8 days. Get camped together, beautiful sunset. Clients have already been fishing that night. Next day, wake up, river super low. We're dragging boats all day. And with this specific trip I was on, we have 3 guides that are actively guiding, and then another guide is going ahead of everybody else in the gear boat. So we have a boat just for gear and food, and that boat would go ahead and would have lunch set up for the guides and the clients so they could fish behind them. Lunch was set up. Once lunch was done, that boat would hop ahead and have the tents and dinner and everything set up, so that when we rolled into camp that night, it was good to go. So we were first day, we're putting everything together. Clients fish their way downstream every day, so that by the time we leave camp, we're just pushing water to catch back up to our clients, and then they're fishing out of the boat. First day, right, we're on this cliff, right, and we're talking about landing on the cliff and camping on the cliff, but we got to get our boats down to the bottom of the cliff. So we literally fill our boats with gear. We walk them to the edge of the cliff, and we shove our rafts off the edge of the cliff, and they fly down this steep cliff and out into and across the river. And then we wait out and grab them. And then we walk them down. And every night, like I said, we're camping on the side of the river on gravel bars every single night. And starting out, you're in the mountains. And every day, the terrain changes. You go from mountainous tundra, and then it gets a little bit more wooded, and then it gets narrow, and then it widens, and then it narrows. The type of trees change. You go from getting a lot of rainbows and grayling and char up high, and then you start hitting a few salmon. The pinks were pretty much done at this point. The reds were spawning pretty heavily. So the further down you got, the more reds you had spawning, and the trout and the char would sit behind those. And then you start getting into more silvers, and then we were getting into a few chums. Like just the further down you got, the river changed until you got to the point where it was like flat, like you could see a long ways. It was rolling. You had short bushes instead of trees. And then it was just super cool because you were fishing pretty much untouched water. I mean, obviously there's other outfitters, and even our outfitter ran several trips out there this year, but for the most part, it's untouched. These trout don't get caught a lot. They don't see a lot of flies. You don't see a lot of garbage. You don't see a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like there were times you'd have one grayling try to eat a mouse pattern 8 times. That doesn't happen on the Yakima.
No, it does not.
But some truly massive fish. I think the biggest fish that any of us caught on that trip was a 27-inch rainbow.
Yeah.
There was several 24 inches put in my boat on that trip, measured. We were catching silvers up to the point where I was sick of it and I just wanted to be done. I never wanted to see another silver in my life. We would pull up to a hole. The silvers like to sit in like the slower slack water off to the sides, like beaver dams and just anywhere they kind of get off to the side where it was kind of slow and low. They'd hold in there. One client would cast in, boom, client in the front will hook up on a fish. By the time we're getting that fish close to the boat, boom, second person in the back, second fish. And then it would just switch back and forth. Time you get one fish in, the other guy's got another fish on. And at the point, like, all right, guys, we got to push. Like there were times we roll into camp late at night because we're catching so many freaking fish. It's like, dude, you got to go. Like, and then we're getting to the point where we're just throwing poppers for silvers, right? We're catching so many silvers on streamers. We're like, all right, what can we do different? Oh yeah, let's throw a popper out there. And like, there's nothing like watching like a 15-pound silver eat a freaking popper off the surface.
That is sick, especially in a river. That is incredible.
Dude, it is insane. And we were catching, I remember one night I caught a silver that had like 15 sea lice on it. It was so bright, it like hurt my eyes.
It's like glowing.
Yeah, dude, it was pretty nuts. And the fish out there, super aggressive, untouched, super beautiful scenery. And then at the end of the trip, you almost float into the Bering Sea at the end. And then these people pick you up on 4-wheelers and they take a couple trips and they shuttle you through their village, which is super cool to see. And I'm literally sitting on the front of a 4-wheeler as they're driving on the beach across the Bering Sea, like on the edge of the Bering Sea.
Yeah.
And then to the village, back to the airport, from the airport to Bethel back to Anchorage.
Yeah, that's an intense trip. That didn't fill the need for an epic trip. Yeah, I want to go do something like that.
And I never thought I'd be able to do that because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, those trips are expensive, and I was like a dream trip of mine.
Yeah,
and to be able to guide it was super cool. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd ever do that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming to an end. Just one more thing for you. If someone was looking, they listened to our podcast and are like, hey, I want to go do a trip with Kyle, how could they do that?
So best way to do that, next year I will be guiding with a different outfitter, Bearpaw River Guides. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or our website. We're based out of Willow, Alaska, which is about an hour and a half north of Anchorage. So pretty close. A lot of people, you could fly right into Anchorage and you could be fishing within a couple hours. Super close to a big population area. We're also right off the Parks Highway. So if you're driving along the Parks Highway to go towards Denali, Talkeetna, into the interior, boom, we're right there. You literally have to drive over the creek. So you can reach out to either me or you can reach out to Shane and we can get you on the calendar. I'm already booking trips for next year. And we are actually running a deal right now. I believe that runs somewhere around Christmas, where if you book a trip now between now and then for next season, you are entered into a drawing to get I think it was 50% off of your trip. So if you want to get on the calendar for next year and possibly get on a good deal, do it now, do it sooner rather than later. You could possibly get that little bit of a discount. Yeah. Super stoked. We are just offering those trips there on the road system. The place where I guided before, we did do those fly out trips, but where I'm at now, we will not be offering those trips. But if you want more information on doing those expedition type trips, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to me personally, and I can tell you where to go and who to talk to for doing that.
Absolutely. And, we got this Instagram. They can reach us through our, personal Instagram. They can reach out through our outfitters. If they want to just go, like I said, right through our podcast Instagram, and, me or Kyle will be able to send you in the right direction for either way you're going. And yeah, I'm stoked because I hope I get to meet some people that are listening to this podcast, and I get to get you on my boat and we can chat more. Me and Kyle, we do conversations here. We're learning about each other and talking, and we'd love to get, to meet one of you, or, we probably met a couple of you already listening to our podcast, but yeah. And we just wanted to say, if you did spend the time to listen to our podcast, we are very thankful that you took the time and you're supporting us. We're doing this for fun, but we also, we really enjoy it, and we hope people are going to get something from this. So to end another episode, this was the Young Guides podcast, and we appreciate you listening. I'm Keaton.
I'm Kyle.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys. Peace.